Hey everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about 3 principles of meaningful conversations. So that is 3 principles that I think people should follow when they want to have a meaningful conversation with someone else. And so the importance of having meaningful conversations cannot be understated. For one, a lot of people do think that if you have skills, then you'll make it in the world. So if you have a certain skill, then you can be successful. But that's not typically true for most people. In fact, what might be more important than your skills are the people who can advocate for your skills. So it's about who you know. And how do you get to know people? You get to know them through conversations. And that's why it's important to have conversations, and more importantly, meaningful conversations with other people. Another thing that prompted me to make this video is I've heard a lot about how a lot of people, when they say they can't carry a conversation, they say it as, something they're doomed for the rest of their life to be not good at. People make excuses like, oh man, I'm too introverted to carry a meaningful conversation, or I can't think of any ideas to make conversation when I meet new people. But after thinking about it for a while, I realized that actually having conversations is a skill, much like public speaking is a skill. And nobody denies that public speaking is a skill. And like any skill, you can get better at it. And I think with some good guidelines, like the 3 principles I'm about to say in this video, I think you can be on your way on having meaningful conversations and making meaningful connections. So one caveat I will say is that a lot of the examples I come up with in this video are more geared towards meeting new people versus developing your relationships with people that you've already met. But certainly the principles can be applied to any conversation that you have. So first off, if you like the video or the rest of the video, I'd really like if you like and comment down below. And if you have any suggestions or you want to keep up with the videos that I'm going to do next, feel free to join my Discord server, and I'm going to put the invite link in the description for people to join. So first, we're going to start off with what to avoid, an example conversation where things go wrong and neither the first person or the second person are very happy with the situation. So here's an example of an awkward conversation. Person 1 is meeting person 2. It might be at a convention, it might be at a bar. They could be either gender, very generic conversation. So person 1 first asks person 2, hi, it's nice to meet you. Where are you from? Person 2, and they say, I'm from Kansas. Okay. Well, person 1 tries to ask another question. How long are you here for? Maybe they're at a convention, or maybe person 2 has, maybe since person 2 is from Kansas, maybe they're taking a vacation to where person 1 is. It doesn't really matter, but person 2 says something like about a week. Okay. Person 1 says, well, that's cool. What's your current job? And person 2 says, I'm currently an accountant. Right now, the conversation is very, very dead. It's not really going anywhere. It's not very meaningful. Okay, and person 1 is person one is starting to realize it's getting awkward. Probably person two does as well. Person one's like, damn, my back hurts super bad. It hurts from carrying this conversation. He probably thinks that in his head. So his conversation is super awkward, and both person one and person two fail to find much meaning in it. So what went wrong here? So there are a couple of things that went wrong. So first off, a lot of people say, well, if you can't figure out what to say, try asking the other person some questions. And so person one, maybe hearing that advice, decided to do that. But what people don't add is that what's very important are the questions that you ask. So here these questions have where are you from? How long are you here? What's your job? Right? These are questions that can be answered very shortly. So if you ask them all at once, it kind of sounds like a job interview, and that's not where very meaningful conversation happens. So many people, in fact, with the joke that person one is carrying the conversation here, many people assume that it's person two's fault for not really positively responding to person one's questions or asking their own questions. But as earlier, right, the types of questions that person one asks are also very important. So it's not necessarily true that it's solely on the fault of person two. So one big problem is how person one approached the conversation with his questions. Okay. So that's what made the conversation awkward. So some takeaways here. Okay, with a rapid series of questions that can be answered with short responses. Okay, so person one seems too invested in the conversation for meeting someone with the first time, right? And we gotta figure out how person two feels, right? If you're asked a bunch of questions all at once, this can wear you down. Person two might feel like they're being interrogated, which is not really a state of mind you want to be in when you want to have a meaningful conversation. And the most important thing, maybe the most important takeaway, even though person one is following the advice of asking them questions and learning more about themselves, learning more about the other person, although person one is asking person two questions, they're not really learning more about questions of character, of their values. And that really leads me into the first principle of meaningful conversation. So the first principle is that in a meaningful conversation, you've got to approach the other parties, a party or parties, with genuine interest into their character and their values. So what I mean by this is that when you approach the conversation, so asking people questions is okay, of course, right? Because to get to know people better, you have to ask questions. But if you go about it in the wrong way, right? If you just tick off the boxes, where are you from? How long are you here? Where do you work? Or what job do you work at, right? These are not really questions that, even though you may be interested in them, these are not really questions that probe deeper into what kind of person they really are, right? So we can improve person one's conversation strategy, all right? You can still ask questions like, where do you work? Or what job do you have? Or where are you from? Now, the idea to improving the conversation strategy with respect to the first principle is that you've got to tie it in with something more meaningful related to yourself or a question related to their values or character. So instead of rapid fire, say asking person 2 standard questions, person 1 can make a comment about their responses. So regarding their own knowledge and experience, or maybe about something related to their response. So in this way, right, person 1 shows the person 2 that they are invested in what person 2 says and interested in their response. So, and these comments can also offer opportunity for person 2 to ask person 1 questions or follow up their comment with their own comment or things like that. Okay, so here's an example of an improvement of this conversation. All right, so person 1, all right, this is the same as last time. Hi, nice to meet you. Where are you from? Person 2, I'm from Kansas. Person 1, oh, that's cool. I was actually in Kansas City very recently. Everyone I talked to was very kind. So is the same thing true where you live or lived? Question mark. And so person 2, right? Now there's something to go off of, right? Person 2 is asked an opinion-based question about, whether or not the people are kind or not, right? So with this question, we're really looking into their character and values, right? We're looking if they value kindness, kindness, honesty, etc., right? So depending on what the other person's response is, you should follow up with a comment or question that is related to the response and maybe looks into these values a bit. Okay, so now maybe I know what some of the viewers are thinking, right? So some of the viewers are thinking, well, what if I've never been in Kansas City? Well, I've actually been to Kansas City very recently, but dear viewers, what if you've never been to Kansas or Kansas City? Well, there are a couple things, right? Maybe you know a friend that's been to Kansas. And then you can say, oh, my friend, he just recently went to Kansas City. He said blah, blah, blah about blah, blah, blah. And the person presumably from Kansas can, maybe relate. Maybe, right? You want to know, maybe you've never been to Kansas. None of your friends have ever been to Kansas. But there are still things you can ask, like, what are the people like over there? Or, what are the people like over there? Or compared to maybe the area where you're having the conversation. Or maybe if such a thought doesn't pop into your brain right away, maybe you can, cut the tension with a joke. Or maybe you can say something about how is Kansas really as flat as everyone says it is, right? Because I think, it's either Kansas or Oklahoma. That's the United States' flattest state by geography. Okay, so those are some other ideas, of course, right? They're not exhaustive, and in fact, they don't really need to be exhaustive. And really, I don't need to include this slide because here's a big tip. Okay, really, the exact wording of what you say and even really the content of what you say matters very little. Actually, it matters much less than genuine interest into the other party's character and values, right? Following principle 1, right, you should try to ask questions or make comments and look into the other party's character and values. And what you say actually means very little. Okay, and we'll get more into that in a little bit. All right, and this leads us to principle 2. Okay, so principle 2 is about really an interviewer versus interviewee mindset. So in principle 2, right, when having a conversation, you really want to think of yourself as the interviewer. So instead of thinking of conversations as you trying desperately to form a connection with them, okay, you want to think of them, you want to look into them, right? Maybe using principle 1, you want to look into their character and values. You want to qualify them as worthy of your connection. So you want to see yourself as the interviewer rather than the interviewee. Okay? And so actually, right, so a lot of times what I see people make this mistake are the so-called nice guys, right? Maybe you've heard of them before. Nice guys are people who, you know, act really nice, but they can't seem to get affection from a woman, right? And so this is really a problem of the mindset of the nice guys. Really, so what nice guys do wrong, they see women as the prize, right? And maybe society in a way trains men to see women as the prize, which is really bad, actually. And so instead of seeing the woman or anyone as a prize that you're desperately trying to achieve, you want to see yourself as the prize instead. And anyone who's having a conversation with you is, you have to evaluate whether they're worthy of you as the prize. And really that almost sounds narcissistic, but it's really not. It's really about elevating yourself and treating yourself with respect. So what are some ways of applying principle 2? So one big way, and something that we've touched on when discussing principle 1, is focusing on asking questions that probe emotions. All right, so we're in the interviewer mindset, so we want to qualify the other person or the other party for your specific connection. So you want to determine whether they have character or values that you want to connect with. So this is with principle 1 in mind. Okay? So you want to ask questions that probe emotions, because people are very emotional creatures. And so when emotions are involved, you can quickly tell their character and their values. And so similarly, right, if the person is worthy of connection, they also want to qualify you as worthy of your connection, even though you don't want to think about that, as principle 2 shows. When you're talking about yourself, you want to describe, of course, your emotions behind what you say. For example, if you're asked what things you enjoy, or you're asked to talk about something you enjoy, right? A generally good conversational formula is I like / enjoy X because Y. So Y is why I like doing X. So for example, I like running because the feeling when you run is like nothing else. That was just an example. Actually, I hate running a lot because it's exhausting and takes too much commitment. But that's actually it. So this is a generally good formula for describing the emotions behind things that you might like to do or enjoy. And not only is this formula good, but you can also follow it up with a question, right? So I hate running because it takes too much effort and it makes me feel terrible. Are there things that make you feel terrible as well? So you can follow it up with questions like that. Okay. So here are some example questions which probe emotions, right? So here's the first one, a very sappy one. Is there anywhere in the world you'd like to go right now, right? So you just ask, and maybe and why, right? Right. So the why questions really probe emotions a lot. So another example is, what do you enjoy doing outside school work and why? And the why questions are definitely emotion probers for sure. Maybe the person talked about X, which is just maybe an event or some hobby that the other person said they did, and you can maybe ask, what did you enjoy the most about X? Or what do you enjoy the most about X? That kind of thing. So really, when you're asking these probing emotional questions, you want to show that you value people with certain qualities, right? This will influence the questions you ask for sure. Okay? The bottom line is that for meaningful conversations, and maybe this should be a principle, but for meaningful conversation, you've got to affect the other party's emotions, right? So as I said before, humans are very emotional. Not only any gender in particular, no gender in particular, but everyone is very emotional actually. And so you won't remember what you ate last, say, Tuesday. Maybe if you meal prep, you will remember. But for a lot of you, right, you won't remember what you ate last Tuesday or maybe last month at that restaurant, right? What you will remember a meal where your emotions were touched. Like say you're getting married, right? A very, very happy time, right? You might be inclined to remember the whole day, including exactly what you ate, or like what the cake was like, things like that. So you tend to remember situations where your emotions were heightened. That's the point I was trying to make. So principle 2, right? As the interviewer, really you're sort of requiring yourself to have high standards for your conversational partners, right? Because you want to treat yourself with the utmost respect, right? And you want to evaluate people as whether or not they are worthy of, say, having further conversations or not, right? And so really, you should think about your own values and character as you're evaluating theirs, right? And so even if, right, you're trying to make a connection with like the richest gazillionaire in the world, right? You really shouldn't be afraid to disagree on things, right? Disagreeing is normal, it's in human nature. And you don't want to be afraid to say something that you really believe in. So here's an example, right? I found it on Quora. So this guy, he was trying to make a deal with this other guy, right? And these are very rich dudes. And so to seal the deal, right, I guess guy one invites the other guy to a restaurant that he likes to go to. And at the restaurant, guy two is like horrible to the waiter and management. And so guy one, right, following principle 3, he says something along the lines of, I can't believe that you've acted like a child, right? I go to this restaurant every often, right? I'm friends with everyone here, and I won't have you disrespecting my friends like that, right? So you've got to stand up for things you believe in. You've got to stand up for your friends. So that's really the essence of principle 3. Okay? You can't be friends with everyone. All right? It's just impossible to be friends with everyone. And to that regard, right? if you are in a conversation with someone else and you determine that their character or values is incompatible with yours, then actually you should try to end that conversation as soon as possible, right? It is really a waste of your time and theirs if you keep the conversation going, even though you know that you two are incompatible. Okay? So I'm almost done, but there are still some things to keep in mind with principle 3, right? There are many ways of disagreeing with someone in a respectful way. Okay? So I'm not really going to go into that, but trust me, they exist. And I know it's hard to believe, right, with all the politics that goes on in the world. But there are many ways of respectfully disagreeing and, respecting yourself and them. But try to avoid heated arguments, right? These are not very conducive to meaningful conversations. They'll kill the mood real fast. For people not even in the conversation as well. Maybe if you're in a restaurant and you're arguing with someone else about whatever. Okay, so those were the 3 principles. Okay, I hope you enjoyed me talking about what I think makes up meaningful conversations. So as always, if you enjoyed the video and watched it all the way through, I would encourage you to like the video and comment down below. And if you have suggestions for me or have any ideas for future videos, feel free to join my Discord server. The link is in the description below. All right. Great.